All right. Eli, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So
Good to
we
see you
have
again.
we have this being projected into another room and they've got speakers in there. So
Great. Hi, everybody.
so I wanted to start this discussion just asking you about your beginning of your art career and how you got started and also your art education and how that kind of either played a role in helping you or hindering.
Sure. So I think the beginning started like everybody else's and just panic, just abject fear. Student loans bearing down on me and, needing to get work and not really knowing what to do. Uh, I remember essentially polling all my teachers, like just going one by one. I asked I asked George, I was like, hey, what did you do when you got out of school? How did you get work and whatnot? And he goes, mm. I'm like, oh my God. And I asked Joe Teal, and he's like, it's different for everybody. And that wasn't that at the time that didn't feel helpful, but that's actually been my answer to a lot of my students. It is different for everybody. For me, honestly, like one of the first things I did when I got out of school was I just got a job. I worked at the campus store at Ringling for a couple of years, and I worked at Sarasota Art and Frame for a couple of years. Uh, you got to pay your bills, and and honestly, like it's good for you. Like I think if I had just sort of like languished in my basement or and just like crossing my fingers for work, I probably would have fallen into a much deeper depression than I had already. uh Getting up and having someplace to go is important, and like it builds a work ethic. As far as the art career stuff is concerned, that stuff sort of starts the second you take any kind of payment, so if you're doing small jobs for like local stores or law firms, whatever, graphic design jobs, like designing business cards, you're working. It may not be a lot of money, but like that's the stuff that builds your career. For me, I did when I was working at Art and Frame. I met a lot of other people who loved art and wanted to be artists. I taught some classes. I did some demos. I did small jobs that I remember restoring somebody's family crest once, and that paid me a few $100. And that was a good experience. Like they was interacting with clients and getting feedback and criticisms from people who don't necessarily have the same creative language, which is, now that I'm on the other side of that, that's the whole job, is talking to people who don't have the design language to talk about your work, but are in charge of it. They have say over it. So that was an important experience. So taking small jobs I would definitely recommend that. So that helped a lot, just sort of building my sort of hunger for bigger jobs too, just wanting to like do more. Like, shoot, I like getting paid for my work. That's awesome. So that helped a lot. As far as my education is concerned, I mean, today, I mean, like my technique now, all five of them are based on things that I learned from my teachers in Ringling, honestly. Like I did Joe had taught me this, not really a technique, but a sort of principle in working in Photoshop, like just making a bunch of different pieces and then smashing them together and seeing what happens with like the layer styles and whatnot. I still work like that. That's still almost everything I do. George taught me a bunch of painting techniques and got me sort of really thinking about intentional mark making. That was a huge deal for me, especially at the time as a student where you're just sort of floundering around. Brandis got me obsessed with mixed media techniques, like just being curious about things. I remember I was sitting in your class, Caleb, and I think it was like the first day of digital illustration, and two things I took away from you. You taught us how to separate line art, right? I teach my students that now. Say the same technique. It's fantastic. It's super easy. It's great. And then another thing, which was, I think was the bigger, more important takeaway was, you were just, while we were working at our computers, you were sitting at your desk, just drawing, right? Like, just like making stuff for clients, just like they hadn't even ordered it, but you at the, I think it was like Don John you were working for or something at the time.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, they buy like palm trees and like floral stuff, like that's their whole stick and whatnot. So I just make a bunch, and when they call, I have a bunch ready, and I just smash it together, and off it goes, and I get paid. I do that now. I teach my students to do that they should always be like chipping away at things and making textures or, experimenting or whatever. And that stuff becomes your catalog, your arsenal. You smash it together, and you never know what to come out of that. I still work like that. Like I have studio days where I'm just either on the press making textures or with watercolors or in Photoshop, just playing, and then that stuff ends up in my work. I'll make random sort of abstract figures doing random poses, and those have become the basis for paintings a lot actually in the last couple of years. So that stuff never goes to waste. That's one of the things I picked up from you. So I think what your teachers can contribute to your education and what you take into your career is wildly important. It may not be immediately useful. You may not immediately understand it. Like my collage technique, for instance, George is responsible for that, but I didn't know it at the time. Like he had given me this manual to read that he had gotten as a student. And I read it, and I was just like, none of this makes sense to me, but I'll keep it. Thank you. And it wasn't until a few years ago I was looking through it again, and it just clicked. Like there was an experience that was missing from my my practice that I think was requisite for it. And once it clicked, it opened up my work completely. And so honestly, like my teachers, all of them, have had a huge impact on my career. The school itself, I mean, like that's a different thing. The institution is different. Ringling was wildly supportive. I was a student during a really sort of crummy financial time for America, and I lost my student loans after my sophomore year, and I was out. Like they just weren't. I just didn't have the money for it. Ringling, they gave me a scholarship. It was 2 years. They paid my way for junior and senior year. So they were wildly supportive. So Ringling again is been fantastic in regards to sort of helping me jumpstart my career. There's some aspects that I wasn't super happy about. Portfolio class, I think, is still a waste of time, but not just at Ringling, but everywhere. Every school that I've taught at has a sort of similar class. Your teachers don't know shit about getting you a job. They don't have the answers. That was my takeaway. They're not there for that. They're there to teach you how to paint, how to think creatively, how to design, how to find yourself as an artist, which is a real thing. And it's not magical thinking or anything. Like finding your voice, that's important. But the job stuff, that only comes from experience. That comes from getting out there and trying stuff and meeting people and applying for jobs and getting rejected and all that stuff. Like your teachers, they don't have that experience. I don't have that. Even as a working illustrator, I can't tell you what's going to get you a job. It's like, I think my first book cover was a DM on Twitter. Like no one could have predicted that, So, it's going to be different for everybody. I think right now, the important thing is to focus on making cool art. That's really what's going to get you work. That's what got me work. That's what's gotten my colleagues work, is just master your craft, or try to, try different techniques, experiment. There's, and that's gonna, like your career is gonna take its shape around that process. Like whatever you're putting out into the world, it's gonna give it back to you. Like I was making a lot of these paintings that, I love books. I've always wanted to make book covers. Of making these paintings with those things in mind, and art directors at publishing companies took notice, and I started getting contacted. It's really about what you put into it, and that could be anything. Because like I don't like I'm not sure how many people are in this class. I can't see everybody, but every one of you has a different interest, and might have a different career trajectory. So like, there's no one answer, like, so I told my students all the time, they would bring in like anime and original characters and all this stuff, and I'm just like wild for it, because like that's the stuff that's going to make your career, I think, because like that's the stuff you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So like I was passionate about book covers and science fiction and fantasy and that stuff, comic book art, and I just kept making that stuff because that's what got me through the day. Like, it's just like, it wasn't going to be work. I wasn't getting work in the beginning. I wasn't getting contacted or anything. So, but I wanted to make stuff. So if you keep that going, you'll be fine. Eventually somebody will take notice, or you'll build a fan base and you'll be able to crowdfund something. I mean, I have some experience with that as well. And like, that's huge. Like, if you can create a community that loves your work, I mean, you don't need clients at that point. You don't need, the publishers or DC Comics or whoever. You've got, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people who, love your work and occasionally give you money. And, that's all you need, So like I said, there's a lot of different ways to approach your career. And I know I heard that a lot of, some of you are seniors. I'm not sure if all of you are seniors or not. But that's a scary time, because like, you feel like you need to sort of show what this has all been for, like, all right, I got to graduate now. I got to prove that this was worth it. That's not how this works, unfortunately. Like, art's a long road. Sorry, I'm I'm just rambling now.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
But art's a long road. One of the things that when I had asked George how he got work after graduation, he told me it took him 10 years to get his first real gig, and that was scary to me. I was just like, I was a little older when I was in school. I was in my 20s. Yeah. And I was just like, shoot, I'm gonna be in my 30s when I get my first job. Oh shit. Sorry, I don't mean to cuss. That was scary, but it's not your first gig in 10 years. I don't know if that, I probably doubt that was the case for George too. I'm sure he had sold a couple paintings to somebody along the way or done a job for somebody. Like, you fill that time with smaller jobs and smaller assignments that build your experience and whatnot. So I think the second you get out there, the second you take that first $20 for a band poster or whatever, you're a pro, so there's really not a lot to worry about. Your student loans are something else. I can't advise you for that. I'm sorry. But yeah. Sorry, that was a long, very long answer.
No, that's great. So one of the things that I specifically remember is you coming with us to New York Comic Con, and we brought way too many students that year.
Yeah,
so it was just like packed to the gills. And the only thing I recall you bringing was like a pad of paper and some crow quills and some brushes. And you were like, I'm just doing pen and ink stuff.
Yeah.
So some of these students brought like elaborate setups and all kinds of stuff to sell. And all you had was like yourself, blank paper, and like some ink.
And that was 100% the wrong way to go about it. I've learned my lesson. So like, there's some merit to doing it that way. I think going to a convention and sitting down with a sketchbook and drawing things and hoping to get commissions is sort of the low-hanging fruit of approaching that. It's if you're going to a con, it's like you didn't plan for it. Like, it was just like you just got a random invite one day. That's a way to do it. You'll see a lot of cats in Artist Alley doing it that way. Actually, probably not anymore. I mean, the convention scene has sort of it's a lot more complicated now. Those elaborate setups, those the booths and the products, whether it's zines or books or prints or whatever that is, that's the entry bar. It's the entry gate. You that's the expectation that the con goers, the convention goers are that's what they have. They're coming in, they're looking for these booths. That's what's going to grab their eyes. Whether it's just one of those backdrops that you have, with your work on it, or you have like an elaborate thing with like posters hanging everywhere. whatever it is, like that setup is pretty much, that's the ticket. You can't, you're not going to be able to compete with the other booths if you've got your head down and you're drawing. Now I made, so like that day, I remember that con, that was I made maybe a couple $100 in just like drawings and whatnot, and that was neat. At the time, I didn't even know what to expect at the time. My last convention, with the booth set up and merchandise and whatnot, I think I cleared $9,000 in a weekend. And like that's good pay, for a weekend, and you get to hang out with your friends. I don't do conventions anymore. I prefer to be freelancing than working for the convention season. And that transition was a little rough, but past it now. But the convention scene, it's complicated now. It's not complicated, it's complex. And I think your students who are bringing in these elaborate things and whatever, they have their head on straight, and good on you. Seriously. That's fantastic. Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about the transition from attending conventions to freelancing. Like what was that transition like, and why did you?
Financial. It's financial. I mean, like when I was doing the convention scene, there's a period where I can rely on, a range of income, that I can plan around. If I had stopped going to conventions, that money just disappeared. Like that was annually, that was maybe $20,000 to $30,000 a year. I didn't have anymore. Like that's a big sacrifice for a lot of people. That's their whole income for the year. So I needed to figure out what to do. So at that time I started teaching, actually, to help with the bringing in more income. And then I started really hitting the pavement for work, for freelance. So the financial transition was a little rough. I'm lucky in that I had the support of at the time she was my fiance, my wife now. So I wasn't alone doing that. That's probably not a decision I could have made if I was like on my own. And it's rougher than it sounds. Trust me. It was, once I was able to sort of start teaching, that helped. I taught third grade. I started teaching third grade, and then high school, and then I moved on to college. I taught a few schools, New England, which is now NIH, New Hampshire Institute of Art, which is now New England College, and Montserrat College of Art, and I taught at Tufts University. Those were fantastic experience. It helped me survive. I learned a ton, about teaching, about myself as an artist, like dealing with students. It was a fantastic experience. I loved teaching. I loved it. But that was essentially all I did was replace conventions. It was this thing that was also taking up time from freelancing and, and trying to build my career that way. I probably would have kept teaching because I enjoyed it, but my wife got a position at UVA as a professor. So we moved and I didn't have a teaching job anymore. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm just full time now. So, but I got, over the last few years, I got, I was present for it. I was constantly on Twitter and Instagram and doing the whole social media thing, even through the pandemic. And I did I got a bunch of book covers. I ran my store. I have an online shop, which for a while was a big chunk of my income. And, just running my business, and, now, that business looks like, it's my store, obviously, and my social media presence, but it's also a small publishing company. I publish a science blog with my wife. She's a neuroscientist, and she had this fantastic idea to help get more female scientists on Wikipedia. They just had no presence, and Wikipedia has this long approval process that requires publications in like magazines or news, journalism. So I was like, all right, well, I can do that part, And she's gotten 5 scientists on Wikipedia. It was a huge success for her. So I'm really super proud of her. But like, so my business is taking the shape that it needs based on what's happening around me. So like, it's not just freelancing anymore, but the freelancing is a big part of my time.
Awesome. So could you show us some of your artwork and
Yeah, sure, of course.
maybe talk about that process?
Sure. All right, so you guys see a big winged thing, pen and ink drawing? You see that? Okay, great. Okay. So a little after I graduated, like I was floundering. I had no idea not only what kind of work to pursue, but what I wanted to look like. I had learned a ton of stuff from all my teachers, as I mentioned, a bunch of different techniques, and they were all fun, and I loved all of them, and I didn't know which one was going to get me work. So I just kept making them all. But that led to a little bit of chaos in my head and just like, what do I look like? And so a little after doing graduation, I had gotten fed up of like trying to make art for Magic the Gathering or art for book covers or art for whatever. And I was like, I just need to make stuff for me, because like I'm alone now. I don't have clients. These aren't my art directors. What do I do? So I started making these sort of abstract figure drawings, and this drawing is the first one actually, and it became my visual language for everything that I've done since. Like when I look at a figure that I'm drawing, or from looking at reference, like these are the bones that I see. Like they dictate movement and composition. And at the time, I was just like, "Oh, squiggly lines, these are fun," But like, eventually, it gets into your brain, and it just becomes how you understand things. And I kept. Why is this not? Oh, I see. 1 second. Trying to manage my windows here. Sorry.
No worries.
So I remember hanging out with George. We were testing on new fountain pens, and I made this drawing just really quickly. It was maybe like 15, 20 seconds. And I was just like,
it was this exact drawing?
Yeah, this drawing. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I was just like, okay, I love this pen for one. Fuck, this is my favorite pen. But it took like another 5 minutes for me to look at the drawing and be like, man, this felt really natural. And suddenly I also heard Joe in my head. He was just like, do what feels right, do what comes natural to you. I don't know if he still teaches that tenet in his course or not, but that's been those were the keys to the kingdom for me, was to just like do what comes natural. Over time they evolved, these little pen and ink drawings. And they became how I learned techniques. Every time I wanted to learn a new technique or a new new style or whatever, I had these to work on, and so they became this body of work, even though the techniques changed, because at the end of it, it was all just like the same stuff. It was the same objects, the same content. So like, I don't know, when I was in school, I always got a lot of you have to pick a style, you have to have a cohesive portfolio. For me anyway, that didn't work. That was counter to my instincts. Like I love materials. Like, I mean, you see back here, I've got a ton of shit. I've got a bunch of stuff in a closet over here. Like I love paint. I love anything that makes a mark. It's part of my enjoyment of art. And so because of that, I needed something that was constant, and and I call these things imaginary things that, it was just what came to me at the time. But they became what I tested my techniques against. And then as I learned techniques, and, I began to master things, my content opens up based on my interests, and, of course, jobs and whatnot. So this is a small collage. It's maybe like 4x6. This is another collage. So this one worked out to be, bless you. This one turned out to be sort of a touchstone in my career. Whenever I get contacted by publishers, they always have this image as something that they like. It's like, oh, we want their cover to have this sort of style and whatever. And so, and this was a piece I made for me. There was, it was a challenge. I had been painting a lot of things with a black background, and my wife was like, "Why don't you try painting something with a white background, something lighter?" And so I did, and I fell in love with this painting so much so I sold it a little while ago, and it was like last month. I was just on Twitter. I was like, "Man, I really miss this painting. I wish I hadn't sold this. I got to find some other way to make money." And the owner contacted me, gave it back to me. We traded. I gave him another piece. So it's sitting in my house. I'm, really happy about that. And that'll happen. You'll find pieces that you're attached to. This is some of the process from the collage technique.
So can I ask a question? How much of this is digital? How much of this is traditional?
So I actually have Photoshop layers I can show you. I want to say it's 50-50. Honestly, I can genuinely say it's 50-50. So I start with a pencil drawing. I love making pencil drawings. It's just my preferred tool. And so I did a pencil drawing of this woman, and then I took it into Photoshop and just started making all these different passes on it, like digital versions. I dropped textures in, I'd make changes, and I end up with like 20 versions of this drawing, right? And then I print them all out on tracing paper. You probably can't see this because I'm screen sharing. And then that's what I collage. And then once it's collaged, I go back in with, like thin paints and color pencils, airbrush, whatever it needs. And the neat thing about it is, it's like the process for this is a direct train. So I can stop it at any point and have a finished piece of art. So like my digital work is actually just a couple steps shy of a collage. So like if I do a piece that's digital, and I feel I get to the end of that, I go, this one might work really well as a collage. I can just keep going. It's like everything everything that I've learned has sort of naturally fallen into this sort of process. And at the end of this, I'll have layers that I can show you and what that looks like. So some of my clients are tour books and tour.com. I've worked with Amazon Publishing. I have about half a dozen illustrations for the website for tour.com and a couple book covers, some book covers for Amazon Publishing. I have some work with Wizards of the Coast. So this section is going to be mostly work that I've done professionally. So this was a short story. So this is a funny story. The story itself is a beautiful story. It's sad and a little gross, actually. It's about a soldier who can't die, and he loses a limb and he can grow those limbs back and whatnot, but he has to consume dead bodies. It was gross, but he had these really emotional moments about his identity, and it's intense. I would suggest reading that. It's really short, but it's really good. But it's a story called Painless. And the funny part about it was this was actually the sketch. So Irene Gallo contacted me for this story. This was my first job for tour. And I really wanted to do a good job, So I was just like, all right, I'll read this story, I'll internalize it, do all this stuff in my head, and then I'll make these, these beautiful sketches that she can choose from. And I made this sketch with a couple of others that are just to the same level of finish. And she's like, I really don't know what more you could do to this. I'm happy with this now. If you want to just send me an invoice. I'm like, okay. And that was it. The whole job was over in 6 days, So that was a fun experience. Irene's one of my favorite clients. She really, I'd always heard this about her, that she's really about letting the artists do what they do. And she's 100% that. So it's fantastic to work with her. this was one of my more recent jobs for tour. This was for oh man, what is it called? It's a space adventure story. It's kind of like Buck Rogers, but not so, heteronormative, and the fantastic adventure stories. And this one is literally maybe one session from being a collage. Like I still think about this piece. Like, man, I really should just, but I don't have time for it right now. But this one was important for me because honestly, it reminded me how much I love painting digitally. Like there's something about what Photoshop can do, and I spent a few years studying how to mix paint in Photoshop, which sounds a little weird. But Caleb, you and I should talk about this at some point. There's I so I don't know if I've discovered, but like along the way I've learned that pixels in Photoshop can mix like minerals in oil paint, and that it blew my mind. It's affected the way I mix color in Photoshop and the way I paint, and it's fantastic. But we will talk about that at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so this one was very much with that in mind, finding a sort of a painterly way to approach color. And it's one of my favorite pieces. It's like at the time it was the most like sci-fi thing I've ever done. I mostly do like literary fiction, which is just like sad woman standing with flowers, or sad woman standing in front of tree. Like literary fiction is a very narrow design language. This is another one for tour. This is from the same series. I'm lucky that I've been able to work on a series for tour, which has been really nice. So, like I got to know the world a little bit. This was the first one in the series. This was an illustration about trust. The whole story is about trust. So the theme here was trust falling. And these are all digital. This one was for a crossover event between Tor and Fire Literary Magazine. It's a fantastic Black-owned literary magazine. It's amazing stories, and Tor wanted to support them, so they put a lot of their own dollars behind this campaign, and I'm proud of the work, and the stories that came out of it were fantastic. So some of the processes, the black and white versus the color. This is a cover for Conspiracy of Mothers from Amazon Publishing / Little A. This one was collage. So my collage work commercially is usually reserved for book covers because there's usually enough time to make these things, and the budget is there for that. The budget on book covers is a lot higher than the website stuff. So this one took a lot of time, and this was one of the hazards of publishing that I'm sort of learning now, is that this cover took 14 months to make. This was we went through two cover versions. The first cover went through 7 color iterations, and then eventually it was killed, and we had to start over with fresh new ideas. And at that point, I was just like fed up. I was like, I don't care. They paid me again, which is great, but I was like, I'm just gonna do what I do because I can't do this anymore. And the art director was like, and she's great. She's fantastic. It's like a lot of the sort of higher ups that were interfering with that process that caused that. But I was like, I don't have time to like go through another 13 months of this. I made this cover pretty much without approvals. I was just like, this is the best that I can do. Like literally, this is like I pulled out all the stops for this, and luckily they were pleased with it. They were like, "This is it, we're good." So that was great. The story is fantastic too. I think that's my favorite thing about working in publishing is reading the stories. Like you get these unedited manuscripts that are super rough, and but they're just they're alive. I love this stuff. This was a personal piece, or might have been. This was for Everyday Original. I don't know if you know what that is. Mark Sheff and Lauren Panepinto run an art collective where they help artists sell sort of smaller priced arts. So like $100, $300, that kind of thing. And it's like a really great group of artists. I'm really lucky that I get to participate in that at all. Vanessa Lehman is a part of it, and Boris Vallejo, and the Palombos are there, and Winona Nelson is fantastic. I when they invited me, I was just like, I think you have the wrong person. I'm sitting at dinner with them, like, and like Boris Vallejo's at the end of the table. I'm just like, I don't know what to say. I'm freaking out. So anyway, this was a fun piece to make. I got to play with a different way to approach values, which is a lot of fun. This was another Everyday Original piece, which was a repaint of an older painting I made. But I'll reuse whatever. Like, I think the first version of this painting I made maybe a year after graduating, and it was fine, but I had all the layer files for that painting. I was just like, let me just see what this looks like in a collage, and this came out. I take a lot of private commissions, normally really small pieces, like 8x10, 11x14. They range from like $100 to $500. I do 10 of them every couple of months. This is one of my favorites. This was Roy from Blade Runner. And you can sort of see, like I'm starting to, so this one was a few years ago. I'm a lot looser with the work. I'm less careful about where I'm placing things. A lot of that is because, like, as you learn your materials and your techniques, you're going to learn how to bail yourself out of trouble really quickly. Like, all right, I can try this because I know how to like completely erase it. So I'm going to take this can of soup and put it here and hope that works. And then, and like whatever, you're able to try more things. So I always recommend to my students to stick with a technique for as long as you have interest. Don't ever think that, if you get to a point where it's just like, yeah, I got that, you're wrong. Because like it's always going to surprise you. You're always going to find something else, or someone's going to do something cool. You're going to be like, oh man, I wonder if I put that with this. And then there's never going to be a point where you're like truly a master of your technique. It's just going to get more fun, really. So if it stops being fun, let it go. So this is a digital piece I did 4 or 5 years ago. This is so as I mentioned, part of my business is publishing things. I published an Oracle deck, called Oracle of the Tall Temple, which is a whole IP I've been putting together for about 10 years. And the Oracle deck did really well, the apparel stuff. But this is the image that for me stuck with me. And it seems to have stuck with the people who enjoy the deck. Like, it's the one that gets retweeted the most and gets the most likes and whatever, but this character is significant to me on a more sentimental, personal level, which I'm not going to get into. But I draw her a lot, to the point where I've been doing repaints for a new version of the deck, a new edition, where I'm doing all the art as either digital or collage, depending on what the card is, and I'm making some editorial changes. But so this was a collage of that character, a new design of her, which I did last year. The deck stuff the new edition stuff has slowed down as well as the book. Right now, the world's in turmoil, obviously. But printing has been difficult. Like, getting accurate quotes from printers has been really tricky, and it's probably not the best time to be printing a book. Just it's hard to do that right now. This is another piece for tour. I think this is the best example I have for Irene. Like, I pitched her this idea of like this face painted in a mess of color, and she was like, yeah, go for it. And like, I don't think this would have worked with anybody else. Like, cause like I didn't know what to expect from this piece. She certainly didn't know what to expect. And I'm personally really proud of it. I feel like I learned something from this piece, so it sticks out for me. Participated in another tarot deck with another collective, Woven Path, and this was my card, the King of Cups. And then some random pen and ink stuff. I still love pen and ink. It's still like, it's someplace where I wish I could spend more time. I just, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but luckily I'm very busy, and nobody's buying my pen and ink work. So some recent digital stuff. And I'm writing a comic. Like I'm always looking for the next thing to make for myself. Like the Oracle deck was the last thing, and I had, I'm always writing. And I had this idea for a comic, and I'm chipping away at it slowly. I do like a page or two every few weeks, but as long as every little bit helps. Every little thing will move the story forward. It's definitely more progress than just thinking about it. And then I have some layers I can show you. I don't know if we have time. You let me know where we're at.
We have to end before 10:30. So
okay.
as long as we're before 10:30, we're good.
All right. I want to hopefully somebody has questions. But I want to leave time for that. I'll just quickly run through the layers so you guys have an idea as to what I'm talking about. So this is this is the layer file for that Walker piece, and I'll just sort of peel some of this stuff back. All right, so where do we start? So what I do is I'll take the drawing, and I just start painting on it like I normally do with everything else. Right. And like what I do is every time I get to a place where I go, man, that's really interesting. I love these colors. I love what's happening with this. Like, I think with this one, it was like the area in the face, that hot bit of red. I go, all right, this is a layer. And I just like make a layer of this, just like I'll Control C. And, then I have that layer preserved. And then I just keep going through it. And I'll keep painting and making stuff until I have a bunch of these saved. And then I print all of these out. Oops.
And when you say you print all of these out, do you print them in color? Do you print them?
Yeah. So I have some bits and pieces left over. Let me turn off share. So I print them all out on tracing paper, right, in color or black and white, depending on what the piece is or what I need. Because like some of these layers will be in black and white, and because that's what I need it for. I usually do start with a layer that is a black and white version of it. So like this is part of one, and then I paste this down, and then I just start collaging over it, and then the pieces themselves. So like this is the Conspiracy and Mother's book cover. They get pretty, and probably can't see it, but the finish on them is very much like an oil painting. Like it gets that sort of same, like you can start to see the brush strokes, and the varnish helps with that. So it's not a traditional sort of collage style. If anybody who's curious about this and really wants to know about this, ask George Pratt. bother him, email him very late at night. And you know, but yeah, and when he showed me this is Baron Story's technique actually. Baron Story used to do this with the Xerox machine. Um, I've since modified it to suit my technology and my own interests and whatnot. But like, this it's a fantastic technique, and it's not. No one's gonna look at it and be like, "Oh, well, that's just a collage." Like, no, because like I still drew everything, and like, it's everything. Everything there is mine. So this is what the layer file looks like. They can be very small. I did one recently that was maybe 3 or 4 layers, just because like I found the pieces that I needed in that. But it's like pieces like this, so this is a little bigger. I feel more investment in them, so I end up wanting to print as many iterations. I end up with a lot of waste of like leftover scraps and whatnot, but this stuff goes into the next collage, so like it never goes to waste. I think Mark English used to work that way too. He used to just save paper, print stuff out, and like put it in a bucket, and then save it for later. And that's actually where I got the idea from. But yeah, that's essentially the collage technique. The digital stuff is all the stuff before it becomes a collage.
Yeah.
And then if anybody cares, like I decide what a client's gonna get based on what they're paying me. So like usually like jobs that pay between 1,000 and 2,000 usually come with like a turnaround of like 2 to 3 weeks, and that's not enough time to do a collage or make revisions. So they don't have access to that particular technique. Covers, obviously, like the last one to 14 months can take. There's a lot of time built into that process, and they have more flexibility. Also, paying a lot more money. So those jobs range from 3,000 to 6,000, and so they'll have access to the collage up until recently, anyway. I'm finding that publishing, there's a lot of revisions that happen in publishing. That's the bulk of the job, and the revisions on a collage are too costly and too time consuming for me. So they end up getting at the end, after all the revisions, it ends up being the digital piece anyway.
Yeah.
So like I'm just like, all right, well, we're just not going to do that. I'll just keep the collage stuff for me and my projects. If somebody requests it specifically, I'll accommodate. But I'm not going to lead with it anymore, because you have to think about the time you're putting into your work and what they're paying for it and that sort of thing. Even if you feel like the complicated technique is the best solution, it may not be the best environment for it. Yeah.
All right. So there's a question in the chat. Okay. Do you want to read the question?
I can read it. So I don't, it's up to you. Actually, no, you read it, because then it's more like an interview.
Okay. All right. So has your digital process influenced your traditional process and vice versa?
Yeah, absolutely. For one, I don't think of them as separate. Like my traditional process is the traditional aspect of my work can't exist without my digital. Like I don't have anything to collage without the digital process. So like when I'm working digitally, I'm thinking about what these things can look like, on tracing paper, if the color will hold up, because like some of Photoshop can make colors that are completely impossible. And if you try to print them, they're not going to come out looking right. So like I have to be mindful of what I'm doing in Photoshop. Otherwise they won't translate. So it's always influencing. And then the traditional aspect, when I'm working in the collage, if I have an idea for something, like I'm like, oh man, what would look really cool here, like this pattern or whatever, I have to go, all right, well, in order to make that, I have to go back to Photoshop, So like I have to think about, is this worth the extra time? Because I have to let those layers dry, because they have to be sprayed with a special fixative so they don't smear under the glue. So like it's all the same to me, and I encourage my students to think of their art that way. Like you're not restricted to working digitally because you happen to like Photoshop, like sometimes that's not the best option. Sometimes that's not even where your interest is. Like, man, I learned this cool watercolor technique from Caleb Prochnow. I'm gonna mess with that today. You're allowed to do that, like you're not no, you're not beholden to anybody to stick to any particular style or technique or whatever. And like the style stuff that, and you probably, I got this question a lot when I was teaching, how do you build a style? How do you make a style? How do you, whatever, how do you call your style? Um, you're not the person that's ever going to see it. Like you can't see your style. Like you see the decisions that you made, you see all the materials that you have access to, you see, where your skill level's at. Somebody else is going to be like, oh, these 5 pieces are so-and-so's. That's their style. That's not ever going to be you. You're going to be like, yeah, I made that piece. I was really high that night, or I was really sick that night, or like, your work is going to be marked by your life, not the color paint you use or the pen or whatever, like that's got nothing to do with that. So don't worry about style. Somebody else will say, so we'll call you on that. Just have fun with your techniques and stuff. Sorry, that was more than you asked for. But
That's great. All right. So were there any experiences you had before Ringling that helped you after graduating when looking for art jobs and networking?
yeah, so like I mentioned before, I was a little older when I was in school. So before Ringling, I worked at a bank. I was a supervisor at a call center. I made pretty okay money, but I had like an ulcer. I weighed almost 300 pounds. I was like not living my best life, and it got to a point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna die here. But I did learn a lot from those jobs. Like there's a way that corporate people talk to each other, that if you can get any experience, or listen in on some of those things, that's going to be important for navigating clients, because sometimes like clients, especially from big companies, are going to approach artists like they're, children, like we're not smart. Like all we do is make pictures. And that's obviously not true. So being able to speak their language goes a long way for getting them to calm the hell down with that, so that was a big help to me. Like I could talk logistics with them, without having to be in that world. It was helpful. Having jobs helpful, like just I got to get up, I got to go to work. And I treat my day to day like that now. Like I get up at 7. I'm in my office by 9. I don't leave till 4. I have scheduled breaks. I have a scheduled time to work out. Like take my dogs out. I manage my dogs. Like that all comes from knowing how to like just have a job, because that's all this is really.
So when do you consider a piece finished? Do you feel like you overwork your pieces sometimes?
Oh my God, yes. So this was maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I was working with Pete on Angelarium, and I was doing this piece, and I was like really excited about it. I was like, oh man, this is it. This is good stuff. And like the second I said it, I made one brush stroke and I ruined it. I was like, no. That was the last time I overworked anything. I took that was a valuable experience to me. Like so, it is possible for me to overwork. I did overwork my pieces a lot in the past. What helped me was when I got to that point where I go, this is the one. I love this piece. This is the best thing I've ever made. At that point, I put the brush down. I close shop. I don't care what time it is. I'm off. I'm just done, and I sleep on it. Right. I stop my day. I go to bed. Or if I go to work or go deal with the rest of my life. The next day I come back. I look at it with less excited eyes, and if I still feel like this is the one, and I can't think of any like real actionable things to do. Like I don't see real problems, then it's finished. It's not often that I get excited like that about a piece of work. So I have to have other methods for deciding when a piece is done. Having clients helps with having an external metric for that too. like they're gonna tell you when it's done. And honestly, by the time like you're even considering whether or not a piece is finished, you'll be into the job and you'll be wanting to get paid. So like, you know, your desire to pay rent will dictate when a job is done, you know. For your personal work, I mean, overwork pieces, overwork them, underwork them, destroy them, mess things up, break things. That's what that's for. You know, like don't like I used to tell my students this all the time. It's like nothing you do in college matters, right? Nothing you do in the solitude of your own studio after college matters. That's all for you. That's all fun. That's all heartbreak. It's all anguish, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is for you. That's yours. It's a learning experience. Like dive into it. Because I promise you, when you start working for clients, you're not going to have time to like freak out about like whether or not the world is going to love this piece of art or you're going to get mad likes or whatever. You just want to get paid. You want to move on to the next job. You know, like don't get me wrong, making it sound like freelance work is like this miserable whatever. It's not. It's a joy, honestly. But that job consists of you, your art director, and like their 30 bosses. So there's no time for that. For your personal stuff, have fun, break stuff, you know, overwork it. So yeah, I do overwork pieces, but like I don't, it's not a bad thing to me. You know, I just, all right, this piece is done. It's not great. I'm probably not going to put this on Instagram, put it in my flat files and I move on, you know, like that's it.
So, who has been your favorite client to work with and why?
Oof, that's complicated.
That's a good question.
It's a very good question. So I mentioned Irene. She's great because she lets me run my game. Like, and I imagine that when she chooses the artist she works with, she goes, "This person is doing on their own stuff that I like. I don't have to interfere with that." That's I'm assuming. I'm just guessing. Like she and I have never spoken about this, you know. But like the half a dozen jobs I've done for her, I feel free. Like I take the story, I internalize it, I break it down, I make it mine, and then I make a piece of art that's mine, and then she puts that up for the world to see, and she makes a gift out of it to the author. Like, so Irene's among my favorites, if not the favorite, and honestly, I just took on a new client recently, who I'm working with multiple art directors on. So I don't know the art directors super well yet, but their pipeline is so well organized. It's running so well. It's like a really brilliant machine, that I get to work at a pace that I haven't been able to work at since school. Like when I was in school, my junior year, I skipped all my liberal arts courses and I took nothing but studio courses. I was making 7 illustrations every 2 weeks for an entire semester. And that was me at my happiest because that was me not having to wait around. Like I didn't have to like muddle through or wait through liberal arts courses I just got to make stuff. I haven't been able to work like that since because clients don't work at that pace. This client, however, like I took on 5 paintings for them. And like it's like a 3-week deadline, and I'm like, and I love it. This pace is so fantastic. So I'm really excited about this client.
Yeah.
So I could see them becoming my favorite, just because of the like the pace that they keep. But so far, yeah, I'd probably say Irene at Tour is my favorite. Yeah.
Nice.
Good question. Thank you.
All right. So, how often do you get art block now, and what's your method for escaping it?
Art block is not real. It just means you're tired. Take a break. There's no escaping it. That I'm too tired to think. I'm too tired to draw. I can't come up with ideas. Whatever it is that you're interpreting as art block, you're just tired. Take a break. Go read a book. Watch TV. Like, yeah, I mean, like art block implies that you're being cut off from something. That's not true. Like your brain is still intact or whatever. You're just tired. That's okay. That's normal. Be kind to yourself. don't punish yourself when you feel like you need to draw but can't. It's good that you feel that need. It means that you're passionate about your work, but don't use that as a tool to punish yourself for not being productive. So when I feel that, you know what I do? I go play video games. I play Destiny 2. I play Monster Hunter. I play with my dogs. I go out with my wife. Like I go do something else, even if I'm on a deadline. You know, so. I had a really tough week this week. I was producing these paintings for this new client. I have 3 of 5 mostly done. And then I was just like, oh, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. Then I got an incredible headache yesterday. I was just like, all right, I guess I'm off today. And I'm like, all right, I got this talk with Caleb tomorrow. And there's a bunch of other stuff I want to do. It's Iron Banner week in Destiny, if anybody cares, you know? So I'm like, I'm taking the weekend off because I'm tired. I got that headache because I'm tired. So like, don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt your mind by pushing yourself through that. There's no pushing through that. That's just your body telling you take a break. Yeah, that's my advice anyway.
So can you talk more about your work on Angelarium?
Absolutely not. that was like 10 years ago. I don't. Pete's great. I loved working with Pete. He's a character. He's a genius, in my opinion. I think he's one of the few sort of what's the word? Oh shit, there's a word for it. It's Italian. It's like oh my god, it's gonna drive me crazy. He's a ball of energy. Like honestly, the guy, you know. But like the book itself, like working on the project, I don't remember. Like it was a long time ago. I've made 100, maybe like 1,000 new pieces. I don't know. Like I make a lot of work. I'm proud of the project. Like I just got copies of the new editions that came out, which I hadn't seen. You know, so like, you know, I'm glad that it's still, you know, that it's still out there. It's still doing its thing. But I don't even know what I would say about that, other than like, you know, pizza wealth of information. As far as running a business is concerned, I think that's my takeaway with working with Pete was I learned a ton about running my business, you know, and like there's advice that he's given me that I give my students, you know, and I give him credit because you know, like there's some decisions that I wouldn't have made without that, without having gotten that advice from him. But yeah, I mean. Sorry, I'm sorry I couldn't answer your question.
Can we see your dogs?
Can we see your dogs? Yeah, I think I can arrange that. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
No, my dogs have decided they want nothing to do with this. Arthur is being grumpy. He's on medication that's making him sick. And Moby is deaf, so I can't call him. So
Okay.
I don't actually know where he is. I think he's with my wife right now. So
I heard him barking a little while ago, so I figured they were there somewhere. But
yeah, sorry. Maybe I can share pictures. I don't know.
all right. Well, that's the last of the questions. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Take care.
Take care. See ya.
This was fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.